here is kind of a star. I'm looking so much forward to hear her talk. She is head of user experience at Amazon Web Services, and she will talk about working backwards Amazon's culture of innovation. And you're kind of a crowd, so show that you're a crowd and warmly and loudly welcome Daria Tarevny.
Oh, wow. I can't see everyone, but I think my mic is on, so that's good. Good start. Let's see if we can. Oh, yay. All right. So, hello, everyone. My name is Daria. I lead user experience on a number of projects, a number of products in Amazon Web Services, basically what we call the management tools. So those of you who are familiar with AWS, I lead design on tools such as CloudFormation, CloudWatch, Systems Manager, and these are some of our most used or most popular tools. Before that, I started my career in the industry a long time ago. I had a company, I started a company a while ago in Tokyo and in New Zealand. Then I moved to Berlin. I worked in a couple of startups, dipped my toes a little bit in the agency world, and then I moved to AWS. Before I start talking a little bit, I just want to know, because I can see you, but I can't see you at the same time. But I want to kind of like gauge the audience and see what percentage of product designers versus PMs that we have. How many product managers do we have? Can I see just a raise of hands? All right. And UX designers? Excellent. Developers? Do we have any devs? Cool. So I'm gonna try to give as much information as possible. I'll answer questions on the side. So if anyone has any question for me, I'll be standing right there. I can talk a little bit more freely in private, and I'm happy to give any information. A little bit about how I became a designer and the places that I've been to. So I'm originally from the Middle East, so I started my career in the Middle East, and then I moved to New Zealand, I lived in Asia, and now I'm living in Berlin. And I think the most interesting about being a designer and just having the ability to go and travel to all these amazing places is that you start developing a sense of culture, a sense of not only how users use your product in a very different way depending on what kind of cultural background they are from, but also how can you organize your teams? How do you deal with your teams differently? How can you have that empathy in terms of like making sure that you have the right interaction with the teams? And I think one of the most interesting things that I get asked working at Amazon is, how can you innovate so fast? How can you have like this very fast-paced culture? Because we're developing things all the time, regardless of that AWS or Kindle or Alexa or whatever it is. We have a particular process, which I'm going to go through the process today. But before I go to the process, I want to talk a little bit about the culture. How do we make decisions? Who's making the decision and how these decisions are trickled down? If this allows me to, great. How many of you are familiar of the leadership principles in Amazon? Raise of hands. Okay, one, great. We have 15 what we call leadership principles. I'm going to leave them here for a little bit for you just to see like a high level. So you can find a lot on the internet about these principles, but this is what governs our culture. Any decision we make, building products or hiring, or even like giving feedback to each other is revolving around these principles. You often even hear us sometimes saying, hey, let's dive deep into this topic. Or one of my favorite ones is like, I'm going to disagree and commit, which means I'm disagreeing with your opinion, but we're still going to go, and I'm going to put my 100% in it even though I'm disagreeing. So I want to go a little bit into some of my favorite ones, and I think these are the ones that at least my immediate team uses to make decisions. The first one is delivering results. A lot of time you have processes, and I'm going to be talking about a process today, and the thing about processes is that they're there to make your work more efficient, and they're there to help you deliver results. Because the most important thing for you to do or to deliver is the value for your customer. I often get asked, as a designer, what kind of tools do you use? Do you use Sketch? Do you use Figma? Do you use Adobe? And to be honest, for us, it doesn't really matter. Regardless of the tool, even if you sit next to the front-end engineer and you start developing the work together, the most important thing is for you to actually deliver the result for your customers. The second one is bias for action. So when you make a decision, what we believe in is that you can make most of the decisions by having 70% of the data or the research. If you're going to wait until you have 100% of that data, then you're already way too late to the market. Somebody has already been there and you're just following. But how does that work? Does that mean we don't do research? Does that mean we're kind of like experimenting all the time? No. There are two different types of decisions that we have. And oftentimes you always say, is it a one-way door decision or it's a two-way door decision? A one-way door decision is a decision that you need to put 100% effort into it. Let's say, for example, you're acquiring a company or you're locking yourself into a 10-year contract. Then you need 100% of that time and effort, and you need to know that you're doing the right thing. However, most of the decisions that we have on a day-to-day basis, or even like when building our products, they are two-way door decisions, which means that you would take that decision, but you know you can go back, you can retract that. And that means you need to put all the mechanisms and all the different tools in place for you to collect the metrics, see if you're doing the right thing or not, because if you're not, you want to quickly go back and reiterate on what you're doing. The last one, which is, I think this is the core of Amazon, being customer obsessed. Some companies want to be innovative and they want to focus on innovations. Other companies want to focus on tech. However, at Amazon, we want to focus on the customers. And you see that a lot in how we talk, or how do we develop some stuff, or how we release products. And in order for you to know really what your customers want, or to be customer obsessed, you need to differentiate between the needs and the wants. And customer needs and customer wants are often incredibly different. I have an anecdotal story of a product that I was working on, and we were building a dashboard. And the more we talked to customers, the more they said, oh, we want to download a CSV file. However, that CSV file was huge. It was impossible. Like, you can't download this every week. And we didn't know what they're going to do with it. There's like thousands of rows in this. This is not possible. So we started asking, why? Why did they want to do that? They said, well, they want to create custom dashboards. Great. Why? They said, well, we want to compare the budget from month to month. And then we asked again, why? Because they wanted to keep the cost down. And for us to understand that particular need or that particular pain point, AWS was becoming more expensive for them, and they needed a certain budget to adhere to. So what we ended up building is something completely different, and we ended up building a completely different product based on what they asked us to. So we developed a culture of being askaholic. Keep asking. Why? Even if the question is completely, you think it's like, oh my God, it's a stupid question. I'm sitting on the table with amazing people, and they're incredibly smart, and I'm raising my hand and I'm saying, well, how does that work? It's fine. Because we believe if you're not able, if you're as an engineer or as a PM or as a designer or even as a senior leader, you're not able to explain to me in simple words, how does this work or why are we doing this, then this is not the right product for us to release, and it's not going to be easy for us to explain it to the customers. So that's why we keep asking always. And the more we ask, the more we know our customers. I know we say that a lot, and as UX designers, we always talk about the persona, the customer, but this is really important for us to know who they are, what do they want to do, where they're coming from. If you're working on an e-commerce site, you want to know what's the purchasing power of this customer. Are they doing the purchases while they're sitting on the couch, on their phone, or are they just comparing things on their phone and they go to their computer and that's where they do the biggest purchases? So understanding all of these small little intrinsic points in terms of how customers use your product is really, really important. Another anecdotal story of a product that I worked on when I first joined Amazon, we were working on a feature which kind of like seemed a little bit small at the time, but it allowed developers to connect to a server or an instance without the need of a Bastion host. For the devs, how many of you know Session Manager? Any of you used Session Manager before? No? Oh no, I'm disappointed now. But we were working on this feature. And it was very simple. So you have a list of instances or a list of servers. You click on one, and then that opens a terminal. For the sake of consistency, we wanted the terminal background to be white. However, and that was we were there and we were almost releasing it. However, we started testing this and we started talking to more customers. And what we realized is that we were going to make a huge mistake. Because picture this. As a dev, you get paged or you are on call, and something is wrong. And you go to that list of servers and you want to select the instance that has a problem or that server that has a problem and connect to it to start debugging. And what happens is sometimes you're sleeping. You just wake up, you open your laptop, and you're like, oh my God, I'm connecting to this, and oh my God, all this light, white light that is coming and from my screen. Because we wanted to be consistent, the background of that terminal was white. And that was the main reason why, even though that most of the customers that we were beta testing with, they loved the feature, but because of that white background, they said they're not going to be continuously using it because of how they are usually using it. Most of the time, they're using this particular feature, or they're connecting to instance when it's dark, they wake up, and it was super hard to see, and it's very hard on their eyes. So that small little thing is understanding how our customers are actually using this feature, white background or black background, that would have made a huge difference in terms of the success or the failure of that feature, of that product. One trick we use to ask questions, we call it the magic wand. So when we talk to customers, or we talk even to our senior leaders, when we have like a bunch of features, we ask them, if you have a magic wand and you get to change one thing, only one thing, what would that be? And usually this question trickles down the most important point or the most important thing that needs to be fixed and needs to be changed. And this is the main customer problem or the main pain point that you would be, that would give you the highest ROI or the one that you need to tackle first. And from there, you can start doing your research. There's different types of research. There's qualitative, there's quantitative. Recently, we've been using a lot of MaxDev surveys where, anyone familiar with MaxDev? So it's a type of research, a type of survey where you identify a number of jobs or a number of particular roles or things that customers want or pain that customer wants. And then with that, then you can start seeing which ones are the most important, which ones are not, based on certain criteria. I don't know much about it. I have a number of amazing researchers who just give us these reports, and they're very helpful because they will give us an idea of what do we need to tackle first and what are the most burning issues. So a lot of you came here to hear me talk about the working backward process. Anyone heard about this process before? Can I see a raise of hands? Okay. So any product that you've used started exactly the same way, regardless of which part of Amazon it is. So the working backwards process is the way we build products, or even sometimes start initiatives. And with the working backwards, it means that you start from what the customer experience needs to be, and then basically you work backward from there. So you don't focus on budget, you don't focus on the tech, you don't focus on anything else except what is the ultimate thing that we want to reach, and then we will be able to get to that point, and this will be our North Star. Amazon is very big culture of documentation. So with the working backwards process, it comes a number of documents. We have the press release, the frequently asked questions, and the visuals. The lingo, we call it the PRFAQ, just for the ease of it. And usually we write those when we want to build a feature or we want to release a new product. But it always starts with the 5 questions. Before you do anything, before you write anything, you need to take these 5 questions and you need to answer them. The first one is I tackled before is who the customer is. And then what's the customer problem that you want to solve? What is the main pain point that you want to solve for them? What's their benefits? Like, why are they going to be using this? They're not just going to wake up like, oh, this is cool. No, there must be a benefit for them. Also, how do you know that this is going to be beneficial? And what does the customer experience look like? So what usually happens is that for a number of time, a month or two, depending on how big the feature is or what we're trying to do, the PM, the engineer, and the designer, they will work together on finding answers for these questions. And at that point, they're not doing anything else. They're just finding answers for all of these questions. Where do they find these answers? Talking to customers. I wanted to look at these 3 codes, and I'm going to pause here for like a couple of seconds. These are real customer codes that we've collected. And based on that, can you think of who the customer is, what the problems are, and what are the opportunity? Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Well, the first one looks like a wish list feature. Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be a wish list, it could be gifting, it could be a recommendation, it could be different types, right? And this is exactly what our PMs, engineers, and designers start doing. They will go on customer calls or get their research and start identifying what are the problem, what are the pain point, how do we get to the right product from here? And then they start writing the press releases. How many of you PMs wrote a press release before? Yeah? Did you write it before or after you released the product? Or after? When did you start writing it? Before. Great. Because what I see when I do these workshops, and I work with a lot of PMs, what I see usually happens is that they write these press releases after they built everything. So it becomes like a byproduct of the development process. But at Amazon, it's mostly you start with the press release. So you start with writing that press release, you work with the engineer, and you work with the designer. However, I also kind of like noticed a lot of questions and get asked a lot. So do you spend 8 months writing this press release and then you start developing? No, absolutely not. You spend the time answer questions. But then the job of the PM is writing these press releases and writing the frequently asked questions. But at the same time, there has been already some kind of consensus on what the product needs to look like and how it should be. So the developers are already developing, and the designers are already putting the groundwork for how the experience is going to look like. So all of that is happening at the same time. It's not a waterfall process. It's mostly things are working together. And the press release and the FAQs are there to make sure that everyone's aligned and make sure that everyone's moving towards the right direction. This is an actual press release for a product that we released in 2014. I'm gonna leave it like this. And this was for the new one. Any guesses? This was for the same day delivery. So this was for Prime. And this was, the thing with press releases is when they're written at the final form, they kind of look very similar to what actually gets released in the marketing releases. How does that work? I've talked a little bit about the working backward and being customer obsessed. And the way the teams work, we call them a 2-pizza team, which means a team is very small, that a 2 pizza is enough to feed the whole team. Why? Because if they are very small and they're working together, which means that you have a PM business representing the business, you have a UX designer and lead engineer. And when they go into a room, they forget the titles, and they don't care about their titles anymore. They're actually talking about what the customer experience should look like. And we call that blurred roles. They go into the room, they discuss that customer experience, and then they go back to their desks. Each one will do their own artifacts. So the PM would write the press release, the designer will start designing, and the developer will put together the infrastructure or how the APIs would look like. The interesting thing for us at AWS is oftentimes designers get also the chance to design how APIs work. Because they're working together from the beginning and they're working as a unit, it's a lot easier for them to move, and we call them like they're joined at the hip. Because a lot of times the API would also influence what would how the UI would look like. And having that unit, it makes it a lot easier on the long run. How can you know that you're writing a really good press release? Press releases needs to be very simple. So the rule is, if you are, yes, we do that a lot, we say that a lot. If you're sitting in front of Oprah, is she going to be excited about your product? If the answer is no, then nobody's going to be excited about it. And it's really interesting because this happens quite a lot. So you, as a PM, you're super excited about what you're doing. You really want to do it, and you're kind of enthusiastic, and you go into a room and like, no, sorry. Will Oprah be excited about it? And I've heard that so many times from senior leaders. Is Oprah going to talk about it? Is she going to be excited about it? And then like, yeah, well, no. Well, back to the drawing board. Do it all over again. Yes, press releases you can be as creative as you want. However, there's a certain template to it. And the reason why there's a template is not to restrain creativity. It's because when we review these press releases with your team, with your senior leadership, or with other teams, you don't want to go into discussion with, was it nicely written, poorly written, did I understand it, did I not understand it? That's why there's a template. So you go and you discuss the content and not the template. It starts with a headline, short and simple. An elevator pitch, you have the date, which identifies that it's in the future. You have first paragraph, a summary. Second paragraph identifies the problem. The third one, what's your approach for the solution? A quote by a leader, a customer experience, and then a customer testimony. The customer testimony doesn't have to be like a real one. It can be like a mocked-up one, but that's what you want the customer to say or look or to talk about your product, and then the call to action. What I see a lot when people write press releases is that they forget that the press release needs to be addressing the customer. And what I see a lot is that they start saying, this particular feature or the product is going to increase revenue of the company by X%. But your customer doesn't really care about your revenue, right? They care about, are my needs met or not? So always be careful when you're writing that, and always think, this is a customer in front of you, and what do you want them to think or say about your product? What do you want to tell them about the product? Press releases as itself, it's not enough. You need the frequently asked questions. And with these frequently asked questions, there's two types. There's internal, and then there's external. The external ones are the ones that are what a customer in front of you will ask. And oftentimes they are, what is product X? How do I access it? What would be the first run experience? How is it different from product B, and so on? While the internal ones are more for integration. So if you're working on something that you know that it has to be integrated with another team, then you can write that in the internal FAQs. And then you have the visuals. And the visuals can be anything that would complement your idea. It could be flows, it could be mock-ups, it could be really anything. What also can happen in the PR FAQ is you would add the API, or if you have like particular architecture for the product, it will go there. Appendices, if you need to add more data, if there's milestones that you want to achieve, so milestone 1, we're releasing this, 2, and that, you would add them there. Sometimes PR FAQs are 6 pages, but I've also seen PR FAQs that go 200, 300 pages. It really depends on how much research and how much work or what kind of appendices are there. But it depends from one team to team and depends from one product to the other. And the last thing I'll talk about is the review process. And, wow, that was completely off. The review process, because we are very big on documentation, we don't use PowerPoint presentations. And the reason why is because you really want to focus, as I mentioned before, we focus on delivering results and not the process itself. So with PowerPoint presentations, it's all about the charisma of the person who's standing in front of you. If they have really big charisma, then they can convince someone with, oh, let's put the resources and money in order for us to build this. However, with a document, you write all your ideas. You have the time to write everything you have in your mind, to collect all the data, crisply articulated. And what happens is, I won't say ceremony, but it's like mostly what used to happen is you get everyone in the room, you would print these PFAQs, you put them on the table, and then everyone comes, grabs one. And for 30, 40 minutes, sometimes longer, depends on how complicated the document is, everyone reads. It's complete silence, everyone reads. And then after that, when everyone's ready, you discuss the document. You don't discuss it page by page, but you start the discussion, like either an overall discussion or you ask questions for the owner of the document. And with that, you focus on the content. You focus on what the problems and what the solution and what the product is, rather than focusing on the person who wrote it or their style of presenting it. And that's how most of the documents get reviewed. Of course, they get reviewed by senior leadership, different teams, and get all the way to, sometimes like they get all the way to the CEO. It really depends on how big the product is or how big the feature is. And the reason behind that is the more you share your document, the more you get it reviewed by different people, the more you get eyes on it. Not just makes it a better product and you get feedback from everyone, but you also make sure that when you're tackling a problem, maybe a different team is tackling the same problem or tackling it from different angle. So that's an area for collaboration, or sometimes that's a particular point where like, yeah, I need to kill my product because somebody else is building it and they're much further ahead than me. So this is a little bit about the culture, the working backward. I will be standing right there. If you have any questions, come to me. I'm happy to answer, give more details, give more anecdotes, personal experience. But thank you so much.
Did that girl rock that stage, or did that woman rock that stage? Thank you, Daria.